Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm going to be giving my second thought about Shutter Island. So this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it yet, you don't want anything spoiled, you should click away now because I'm going to go over the entirety of the plot. So Shutter Island is the next film directed by Martin Scorsese. It's starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Ruffalo, and some other people that aren't that important. I shouldn't say that. The plot revolves around Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a U.S. Marshal investigating the disappearance of a murderer who escaped a hospital for the criminally insane. And this is one of those great movies that has twists and turns to it, and you have no idea what's going on until you've seen this movie more than once. And this is another movie I can't say enough good things about. This is definitively my favorite Scorsese film, and that's including the ones that have come out after it. Not saying that he can't put out a movie in the future that will be better than this. I'm saying this is my favorite Scorsese film in existence as of right now in 2019. I love this movie. I think Leonardo DiCaprio is great in it. I think Mark Ruffalo is always good in supportive roles. He always seems to be amazing at supporting characters. I don't know that I've ever really seen him as a main character in something, but he's always great as a supporting role. Ben Kingsley is also in it, and of course he's good. The rest of the cast is all pretty good. So in reality, Leonardo DiCaprio is the insane one. He's the one in the hospital. He's the one who is crazy. And this whole movie, he thinks that he's chasing a criminal. He thinks he's doing an investigation, when in reality, he's a patient at the hospital who escapes, comes back, and tries to kill the doctor. And then he gets talked to, he gets made to realize all of what's happening, and then it doesn't stick because he's insane, and he goes back to the way he was. And if that sounds familiar, it is very similar to Memento in the way that this movie feels, because it's about somebody who's chasing a murderer, and then you find out, oh, they're the murderer at the end of the movie. They're the bad guy. And now, granted, it's different, especially in the way that it's executed, but the idea of it is, especially having that best friend character feel sorry for him and play along with him, as Mark Ruffalo does, just like Teddy's character in Memento does. I just realized I spoiled Memento if you guys haven't seen that yet. I should just have a spoiler warning at the beginning of my videos. May spoil any movie at any given time. But I love this movie. There's so many little intricacies about it, so many Easter eggs sprinkled in this movie that you have to watch this movie multiple times to pick up on everything. And one of my favorite little notes, Leonardo DiCaprio never lights his own cigarettes in this entire movie because he's a patient. He's not allowed to have matches. He's not allowed to have a lighter. So every time he's smoking, somebody else lights it for him. Watch the movie again. Every single time. He never once lights it himself. And that's so cool. That's such a little thing snuck in there, and I love that. And there's plenty more like that. I don't want to talk about every single one. I want to let you guys find them on your own, but there's so many little things in this movie, so many little clues here, little clues there. I love this movie. And even knowing the plot ahead of time, once again, this is one of those movies that I was unable to avoid spoilers before seeing it. I knew that it was all in his head. I knew he was insane going into it. The impact of the ending is so good. It's so crazy regardless. Like realizing that the gun is a toy gun and it breaks apart in his hand. That's just such an impact to that, and I loved that. And then it keeps going for a little bit. The ending is a little bit prolonged, and so you're kind of hoping in that moment that he'll be able to recover, because it kind of looks like he is understanding and he'll be able to keep up with it. And then you have that heartbreaking moment where Mark Ruffalo is talking to him. DiCaprio's character is back to being insane, and you just see it in Mark Ruffalo's face. He's like, here we go again, and there's nothing I can do. And it was so upsetting and so hard to see. And that, for me, redeemed it, because I felt like it took a little too long to end, but that moment in there made that prolonged ending worth it. And I have very few complaints about this movie. One of that being one that I think covers itself over, and then another one being just a couple of editing or filming mistakes here or there. And maybe it's on purpose because it's supposed to be wacky in your brain, but I don't know if you've ever noticed, at one point, DiCaprio's character gets found. He's starting to realize that something weird is going on, but he is still thinking that he is in control of all of his faculties. and somebody comes out to take him back to the hospital where he can continue the investigation. And they're in a Jeep together, and it's obvious green screen. Like, it's so bad. And you can really tell when it's focused on him that it's not real. When it's on the driver, there's a little more believability to it. But I noticed right away it was green screen. And I had to ask myself why. And there's a lot wrong with this shot. One, there's no wind at all. They don't have a top to the car, and there's no wind at all. And then secondly, the lighting is just completely wrong. Like, it's coming from one direction but hitting them in a different direction, and then it's hitting either actor from different directions, and so it's just from shot to shot, the entire thing was a mess. I don't know why that is. Maybe it was supposed to be some sort of whacked out thing that was supposed to be a hint to something, but I doubt it. I think that was just poorly done, which is weird and out of place and not what you would expect from Martin Scorsese or a big name director like that. But that's the minority. There's few mistakes like that in this movie. Overall, this movie's great, and like I said, it's my favorite Scorsese film. It's close with The Departed. I love both of them so much, and then of course I also love The King of Comedy, and I like Goodfellas a lot too, but this is definitely my favorite. It is partially just a bias where I love these kind of movies that you have to watch multiple times to get everything, and Scorsese doesn't generally do that. That's not really his thing, but it really works well, and I love that style of movie, and Scorsese did it well in this. Now, granted, it is also partially the scriptwriter that makes it happen. It's based off a novel by Dennis Lehane, and it was written for the screen by Leda Kalogridis, who hasn't done anything good. The guy who wrote the book, though, has done some interesting stuff. He wrote The Wire, he wrote Gone Baby Gone, he wrote Mystic River, so he's done some good stuff too. When directors don't write their own movies, they're at the mercy of whatever script comes across to them that they want to do. Now, if you're a big name director like Martin Scorsese, you have your pick of the ball. Like, you can pick whatever script you want. You don't have to just take the first one that comes to you. When you're a small name director, you just have to take whatever's handed to you because you need work. It's like Nolan in Insomnia and Batman Begins. He took those opportunities because he needed to get going. But Scorsese at this point in his career, he can pick whatever he wants. So it's kind of confusing to me why he picked some scripts that weren't as good in the past. Like I brought up in Aviator, I'm not a fan of that script. Maybe he liked something in it, but I don't know. It's just the past couple of scripts have been a lot better. And so I'm not sure what made him choose the scripts that he did, but he was able to do so much better with such better material. And so I think Scorsese is a great director, but there's a different category that I hold for auteurs. And in case you don't know what an auteur is, it's directors that also write, produce, and sometimes even act, and like they're heavily involved in their projects. Stuff like Charlie Chaplin. Nolan is because he writes all of his own stuff. Tarantino is. But when directors are just directors and don't write their own material, I hold it against them a little bit. And you see why here, because Martin Scorsese could be the greatest director of all time, debatably, if he always had great scripts like this. But he's kind of at the mercy of whatever script he chooses. He doesn't write them himself. Because of that, he's had lulls in his career. Right now, at Shutter Island, he's at a high point. But he's about to hit another low point in the next few films. I'm not going to say which one ahead of time, but there's one coming up. And so it's just like, he's a good storyteller, but he's not a good... He's good at telling stories, but they're not his stories. And it's the same thing with Kubrick. It's like if somebody has a story that's good, you're good at telling that story, but it's not your story to tell. And that's why I'm almost frustrated by him, where I see these movies and I go, you could be this good all the time. This is phenomenal. And then there's other movies like, that just aren't as good, and it's a shame, and I don't know why. But let's not focus on the negative, let's focus on the positives. And there are a million great things about this movie. This is actually the only movie that Scorsese and DiCaprio worked on together that didn't get nominated for Best Picture. And so maybe I'm the minority here saying that this movie's so great. I don't know. It's got a good rating, it's got good reviews, but apparently it's not the best received one of the movies, but that's just my opinion. So I think that this movie's great, but like I said, I do have a slight bias toward it because of the type of story it is. I've said repeatedly in the past, I'm not a big fan of gang movies. I'm not the biggest fan of like mob movies. I am, however, a huge fan of this kind of movie, and it's done really well. Don't want to say it's perfect. Like I said, there's a couple of nitpicks here and there, but it's good enough that I really enjoyed this movie. Probably give it an 8.5 or a 9. I love this movie. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.